My name is Sylvia Waddle, and I am 26 years old. The reception hall glowed like something out of a fairy tale, crystal chandeliers, scattering light over champagne flutes, polished marble floors, and flower arrangements so tall they seemed designed to outshine the guests themselves. It should have been dazzling. It should have felt like a celebration. Instead, it all pressed down on me like a weight. I stood near the dessert table, the one place few people lingered, swirling a glass of sparkling water and breathing in the faint sweetness of vanilla and buttercream from the towering wedding cake across the room. Everywhere I turned, I could feel the glances quick sideways, pitying, judgmental. People didn't whisper softly here. They whispered strategically. "That's her," I heard my Aunt Patricia murmur to a woman dripping in pearls. Sylvia, Catherine's younger sister. Such a shame she never found her footing. The family tried everything. A quiet heat spread through my cheeks. I pretended not to hear, pretending was something I had become good at. Pretending, blending, shrinking. The role I'd been assigned so many years ago. I checked my phone. 11:47 p.m. 13 minutes until the Wall Street Journal released its Sunday edition. 13 minutes until the article that would shift everything. My publicist had confirmed the embargo several days ago, but the timing tonight of all nights was something no one could control, least of all me. Catherine appeared at my elbow with a smile stretched so tight it was already cracking at the edges. Her wedding gown fit her like armor cinched at the waist, glittering with intricate beadwork. She was radiant, the perfect bride. But her eyes were frantic. "Sylvia," she whispered sharply, guiding me a few steps away from a circle of guests. "Could you maybe stay toward the back for the rest of the evening?" I raised an eyebrow. "The back?" "It's just Richard's parents are very traditional. His father is a federal judge. His mother is a hospital administrator. They're asking about you." "Asking what?" Catherine bit her lip. "What you do. Where you live. They're confused." I didn't know what to say. You're 26 and you still don't have a real job, or an apartment, or, well, anything. What a lovely summary of my existence. And I asked softly, "And it looks bad, Sylvia." She exhaled sharply through her nose. "Mom suggested I tell people you're taking time to find yourself, but they didn't buy that. So I just said you were between opportunities. It's better than unemployed." I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Much better," I murmured. Catherine flinched. "Don't be like that. You could have tried harder. You had offers. You turned down everything. And now it's my wedding, and I'm having to explain why my sister is a failure," I supplied. Her jaw tightened. "I didn't say that." She didn't have to. Before I could speak, she rushed back toward her in-laws, transforming into the polished, graceful version of herself she always showed the world. I watched her glide across the room, poised, adored, admired. Ever since childhood, Catherine had worn the crown of the golden one effortlessly. Meanwhile, I was the girl people squinted at, trying to remember what my major had been, what my ambitions were, or if I had any at all. 11:51 p.m., 9 minutes. Mom materialized beside me, elegant in navy satin, holding herself like a woman determined to maintain dignity in every pose. "Sylvia, sweetheart, why are you hiding here?" she asked. The disappointment tucked neatly behind a veneer of maternal warmth. "Come meet some of Catherine's new family, just perhaps don't mention the job situation. We're telling people you're exploring options." "Exploring options," I echoed lightly. "Inventive." She sighed. "What do you expect us to say? That you've been traveling for years, living off graduation money. No steady employment, no plan. It's not charming, Sylvia. It's confusing, embarrassing, even." My jaw twitched, but I swallowed the reaction. "We supported you," Mom continued. "We gave you time to figure things out. But you're 26. Look at Catherine. She's a senior marketing director at a Fortune 500 company. David is vice president at his firm. Michelle is a partner in consulting. And you? What are you doing with your life?" 11:54 p.m., 6 minutes. I inhaled slowly. "I'm going to get some air," I said, moving toward the terrace doors. "Don't disappear," Mom called. "We're cutting the cake soon and Catherine wants photos. Smile. And look. Successful." The terrace was quiet, blessedly so. Cool night air drifted through manicured gardens, mixing with the distant glow of the city skyline. For a moment, I let the silence wrap around me like armor. Through the glass, I could still see the ballroom's swirling gowns, sparkling lights, the curated perfection of Catherine's wedding. The contrast between their world and mine felt almost cinematic. Dad stepped outside a few moments later, loosening his bow tie. His expression was strained. "Your mother sent me," he said. She's worried you'll leave early. I wouldn't want to upset Catherine, I said flatly. He stood next to me at the balustrade staring into the gardens. You know, he began, I always thought you'd be the one we'd be celebrating. The one who'd shake up the world. You were always so bright, so promising. But now, his voice trailed into disappointment. You're still drifting, still doing whatever it is you do. That's not a life, Sylvia. It reflects poorly on all of us. 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes. His words pricked at old wounds layered with years of comparisons, unspoken expectations, and silent judgments. I wondered if he had any idea how much of my childhood I'd spent trying to earn his approval. Before I could answer, the terrace doors opened again. Catherine, Richard, his parents. Perfect timing. There you are, Catherine said sharply. We need family photos. Sylvia. Can you at least look presentable? Her voice carried further than she intended, slicing the night air with tiny shards of humiliation. Richard's father cleared his throat. Catherine tells us you're in business development, he said politely. What industry? Catherine jumped in immediately. She's between positions. I see, the judge said. And he did see, at least he believed he did. Richard's mother smiled sympathetically. Have you considered going back to school? That often helps those who struggle with direction. Yes, I said I've considered it. 11:59 p.m., 1 minute. They waited for me to follow them back inside. My phone buzzed. 1200 a.m. The Wall Street Journal homepage refreshed. A headline appeared, followed by my photograph. I flicked my eyes up to the 6 people staring at me, and I felt the shift, the tremor, the quiet before an emotional earthquake. Actually, I said calmly, there's something you all should probably see. I held out my phone. The world paused. 6 faces lit blue by the glow of a screen. 6 lives about to shatter. 6 truths about to surface. Everything that came after would change us forever. The glow of my phone illuminated their faces like a spotlight, every emotion exposed, every assumption unraveling in real time. For a moment, nobody breathed. Nobody even blinked. The only sound was the distant hum of the reception hall, muffled behind the terrace doors. Catherine leaned in first, her wedding veil brushing my arm. Her eyes scanned the headline once, twice, then a third time, as if repetition would reveal the trick. The joke, the punchline she desperately needed to believe existed. The shadow billionaire, she whispered, voice quivering. What? What is this? It's the Wall Street Journal, I said softly. Tonight's Sunday edition. Dad reached for the phone with trembling fingers, slipping into the commanding cadence he used when reading contracts, except now every word seemed to drain the color from his face. This says you're the founder and CEO of Sentinel Technologies, he murmured. That you created an AI-driven cybersecurity platform protecting, his voice cracked. 70% of Fortune 500 companies. 73%, I corrected quietly. We signed 3 new contracts last week. He stared at me like I had just stepped out of a stranger's body wearing my face. Mom leaned over his shoulder, one hand rising instinctively to cover her mouth. No, she said faintly. No, this can't be. Sylvia, this says your net worth is... She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Her knees looked like they might buckle. Richard's parents exchanged a quick look. A silent, practiced marital conversation, the kind built on decades of assessing people and categorizing them with precision. And now watching me, they realized they'd misfiled me entirely. Richard's mother swallowed, hard. You built this? She asked, voice small. Yes, alone. I started alone, I said. I have a team now. Catherine finally tore her gaze away from the screen, her face contorting with an emotion I couldn't identify at first. Not anger, not disbelief, not fear. It was betrayal. You lied to us, she hissed. You let us go on thinking you were some kind of mess, some failure. I never lied, I replied calmly. I answered every question you asked. You just never asked the right ones. Don't get clever with me, she snapped. You hid this. You let me embarrass myself in front of Richard's family. You let them think I had a useless sister. Her voice broke. You let me humiliate you, I corrected gently, because that's the image you were comfortable with. That's not fair, Mom interjected shakily. We were trying to understand, trying to help. But you gave us nothing. You hid your life from us. A long, heavy breath escaped me. Whenever I tried to explain, I said you laughed, or dismissed it, or changed the subject. It was easier for you to believe I had no ambition than to listen to what I was actually building. Behind us, through the glass doors, the music faltered. Guests began pulling out their phones. Screens lit up like tiny stars scattered across the ballroom. The article was spreading. Fast. Dad was still scrolling down the page, eyes wide, stunned. This says, he whispered hoarsely, you testified before Congress last year. I did. You met with the Secretary of Defense. Yes. You've advised the White House 3 times. 4, I corrected softly. Most recently about infrastructure security. His hand shook so badly that Mom steadied it, her nails digging slightly into his sleeve. Catherine staggered backward a step, bumping into the terrace table. So all those times we thought you were backpacking through Europe. I told you I was traveling for business, I said evenly. You assumed business meant unemployment and hostels. You could have corrected us, Catherine cried. I did, I replied. More than once. You weren't listening. Her face crumpled. I am your sister. Yes, I said, and yet you believed the worst version of me without question. A sharp knock sounded behind us. The terrace doors flew open. My cousin David stood there panting, holding up his phone as if it were evidence in a trial. Sylvia, holy. Sylvia, tell me this isn't real, he gasped. Tell me this isn't actually... His voice died as he took in the expressions on everyone's faces. Oh my God, he whispered. It is real. More relatives spilled onto the terrace. Aunt Patricia, Uncle James, Cousin Michelle, all clutching their phones, all staring at me like I was some rare artifact unveiled for the first time. I knew she had potential. Aunt Patricia lied immediately. Voice syrupy. I always said she had... No, you didn't, I said calmly. Not once. She froze, lips still parted. Behind them in the ballroom, the wedding band abruptly stopped playing. The murmur of voices sharpened into whispers. Shadows of guests clustered near the terrace doors, trying to peek through the glass. Inside or outside, everyone was watching me. Catherine's wedding was no longer Catherine's wedding. It was the night her sister turned out to be a billionaire. Richard stepped forward, putting a protective hand on Catherine's waist. I think it's best if you leave, he said, voice attempting authority. But the tremor in it betrayed his unease. I was planning to, I answered, after family photos. But I don't think those are happening anymore. No, Catherine said bitterly. They aren't. Her eyes were bright with tears. You ruined my wedding, she whispered. The accusation hung in the air like thick smoke. The Wall Street Journal publishes at midnight every Saturday, I said. I didn't choose the timing. You could have told us, she cried. You could have asked, I replied. For a moment, just a moment, no one spoke. The terrace felt too small, too full of truths that had been buried for years. Then, the wedding planner rushed onto the terrace, face pale with panic. Ms. Waddell, there are cameras at the front gate, she said breathlessly. Reporters, I think news crews. Should I call security? I took a slow breath. That would be my security team, I said. Tell them everything's fine. The planner blinked at me, startled. Your security team, Catherine echoed, voice cracking again. I nodded. My board insisted after our last funding round. There were threats. The planner hurried back inside, leaving a stunned silence behind her. My phone buzzed again, vibrating with a force that felt symbolic. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of messages, notifications exploding like fireworks. I silenced the screen. Catherine wiped her tears with the back of her hand. You did this on purpose, she whispered. You wanted to outshine me. I never wanted to outshine you, I said softly. I just wanted you to see me. Dad finally found his voice a quiet, broken sound. Sylvia, we're sorry. His apology came too late, but it didn't come without meaning. I looked at each of them. Catherine's tear streaks, Mom's trembling hands, Dad's hollow regret, the in-laws' stunned reassessment. Everything they thought they knew about me was gone. And in its place stood a truth they had never imagined. The terrace felt suddenly too bright, too exposed, every emotion laid bare under the soft spill of chandelier light, bleeding through the glass doors. Behind us, guests pressed against the windows, their faces distorted in the reflections, phones raised like a wall of judgment and fascination. Catherine's wedding had dissolved into something unrecognizable, an involuntary stage where every family fracture was illuminated. Dad's apology still hung in the air, fragile as glass. Sylvia, we're sorry. The words were soft, hesitant, as if they weren't sure they had permission to exist. After all these years, after all the dismissals, the comparisons, the whispered conversations about how to fix me, those 2 words were almost surreal. Mom reached for my arm, her fingers trembling. We should have asked more questions, she said quietly. We should have tried harder to understand you. Her face carried guilt, now a raw version of it, not the performative kind she used during PTA meetings or church fundraisers. But guilt, once awakened, didn't erase the years of silent disappointment. Mom, I said softly, you didn't want the truth. You wanted the version of me that made sense to you. She flinched. Richard's father cleared his throat, attempting to reassert a veneer of composure. Miss Waddell, Sylvia, your accomplishments are extraordinary. Truly. He said the last word like someone who'd realized the chessboard had been flipped in a single move. How remarkable that you kept this private. I gave him a polite smile, nothing more. I had no interest in performing humility to soothe their discomfort. Inside the hall, the wedding band attempted to resume playing, but the notes came out disjointed, fractured. The musicians exchanged looks nobody could focus. The guests ignored them anyway. Phones buzzed, screens flashed. The article was climbing through social media like wildfire. Aunt Patricia stepped closer, her voice suddenly velvety, thick with artificial warmth. Sylvia, darling, I always knew you were special. I told your mother many times. No, I said gently, you didn't. She froze mid-sentence, face stiffening like cooling wax. Uncle James tried next plastering on his best business networking smile, the one he reserved for potential investors. Sylvia, sweetheart, we should talk about some opportunities. There's a startup I'm consulting with that could use someone with your resources. No, I said simply. You haven't even heard. No, I repeated with quiet firmness. I don't make major decisions at weddings based on elevator pitches from relatives who avoided sitting next to me an hour ago. He recoiled, wounded pride flickering behind his eyes. Cousin Michelle stepped forward, her voice coated with sugary admiration. This is incredible, Sylvia. Truly. You should have told us we would have celebrated with you. I met her gaze. At Christmas, you told me cybersecurity sounded like something kids did in their basements, I reminded her, right before you asked if I was ever going to grow up. Her smile collapsed. Inside the ballroom was devolving into audible chaos. People were gathering in clusters, some whispering, some openly gawking at the terrace, some pointing, as if I were an exhibit. Catherine watched all of it happening, tears still streaking her cheeks. The light inside the hall reflected off her wedding gown, but nothing could soften the way her shoulders trembled, how small she suddenly looked in the dress designed to make her feel grand. You've destroyed my wedding, she whispered again. Everyone is talking about you, not me, not the marriage, you. I didn't choose the timing, I said. You could have warned us, Catherine cried, her voice cracking like thin ice. You could have told me first. I'm your sister. You're my sister, I said quietly, but you've spent years treating me like an inconvenience. Catherine sucked in a breath. This is not about who treated who, like what she snapped. This is about my wedding day, my once-in-a-lifetime moment. Her voice quivered. And now it's gone. Richard wrapped an arm around her, glaring at me with misplaced chivalry. I think it's best if you leave, he said again, more firmly this time. This isn't the time or place for this spectacle. The spectacle, I replied, is happening because people are reading an article published by a newspaper I don't control. Your wedding was always going to be perfect until the truth made it inconvenient. He reddened. Catherine's expression collapsed into something more complicated, a blend of jealousy, shock, and years of competitive bitterness she'd never openly admitted. Why didn't you tell me, she whispered. Why didn't you tell me? The truth floated up before I could swallow it. Because you would have made it about you. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Then, the terrace doors burst open again. This time, it was the wedding planner's assistant, her voice breathless. There are now 6 news vans outside. Photographers are climbing the front gate. Richard nearly cursed. Dad pressed his fingers to his temples. Mom closed her eyes as if praying. I felt the strange calm settle over me again. The same calm I used to feel in boardrooms, full of billion-dollar investors. The calm that came when everyone underestimated me, moments before I made my move. My security team is outside, I said. This was always going to happen once the article dropped. They're prepared. Catherine let out a broken laugh. Of course they are. More relatives trickled onto the terrace as the ballroom continued to melt down. Some curious, some opportunistic, some genuinely horrified. Aunts, uncles, cousins, family, friends. People who had forgotten I existed until tonight. They always told me you were the clever one, Uncle James muttered to Aunt Patricia not quietly enough. And now that it's profitable, you suddenly agree, I said without turning. He stiffened. Dad finally spoke again, voice low. Sylvia, what happens now? What a question. What happened now? Inside the wedding, Catherine's perfect, meticulously crafted wedding was collapsing under the weight of its own pettiness. The gossip was unstoppable. Every guest was now a reporter, every phone a camera, every whisper a headline. Out front, media crews were calling my name. Behind me, family members were calculating, panicking, regretting. And beside me, my sister stood shattered, not because of what I had done, but because of what she couldn't control. What happened now? I looked at Dad. I leave, I said simply, because nothing I do next will fix what you think I broke. No one argued. Not even Catherine. I stepped toward the terrace doors, each movement deliberate, each step heavy with unspoken history. As I entered the reception hall, the crowd parted instinctively, forming a corridor of stunned faces and raised phones. Some tried to speak false cheer, greedy interest, clumsy admiration, but I walked past all of them without slowing. My security team was already inside, positioned with quiet precision. Marcus, my head of security, nodded when he saw me. Front exit, he asked. Yes, it's chaotic. I don't mind, I said. He signaled his team. The ballroom doors opened, and I stepped out into a wall of camera flashes so bright it felt like daylight. Reporters shouted my name. Photographers surged forward. My security formed a protective barrier, guiding me down the steps, one slow, steady stride at a time. And behind me through the windows, I could see Catherine's wedding fading into the background, swallowed by the story nobody saw coming. The invisible sister who had built a billion-dollar empire, and the family who never noticed her at all. The flashes faded only once the SUV door shut behind me, sealing me in a cocoon of dim light and muted sound. The outside world, its cameras, its questions, its sudden hunger for my existence became nothing but a distant hum muffled by tinted glass. For the first time in hours, I exhaled. My security caravan pulled away from the venue engines low and controlled escort cars bracketing us like silent guardians. A crowd of reporters followed on foot until they blurred into the night behind us, swallowed by distance and darkness. Marcus glanced at me from the front seat via the rearview mirror. Are you all right, Ms. Waddell? Yes, I said. Then after a pause, no, I don't know. He didn't push. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. My phone, despite being silenced, buzzed constantly against my palm like a frantic heartbeat. Notifications piled up, calls, texts, emails, news alerts. Each vibration felt like another hand grabbing at me, demanding answers, access, explanations. I turned it face down on the seat. The city lights flickered by outside the window. Neon signs glowing office towers. Apartment windows revealing tiny snapshots of other lives unblemished by tonight's chaos. Somewhere across the city, Catherine's wedding reception was unraveling in real time, guests whispering gossip, spreading like wildfire, her perfect night scorched by truths she never asked to hear. Not truths I intended to weaponize, but truths she helped bury. The SUV crossed into the financial district. The buildings grew taller, sharper, colder. At this hour, most of them slept their offices dark, except for the occasional glowing floor where early risers or insomniac executives worked through the night. When we pulled into the underground garage of my headquarters, the familiar security lights washed over the hood of the car. A strange quiet comfort settled in my chest. The building felt like the first solid thing I'd stepped into since that terrace. As the elevator doors slid open on the top floor, a soft chime echoed through the corridor. The office was empty, but not silent. The air conditioning hummed, the faint glow of digital displays blinked from control panels. Servers pulsed behind glass doors. This place had always been alive. I flicked on the lights in my corner office. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city sprawling below skyscrapers stretching into the sky, like steel monoliths. My awards lined one wall, framed patents, industry accolades, recognition from organizations that had taken the time to understand me. The antithesis of my family. I crossed the room and sank into my leather chair, letting the weight of the night finally settle. The adrenaline that had carried me through the wedding, the confrontation, the chaos drained from my veins, leaving behind a quiet ache. I opened my laptop. 147 unread emails, 492 Slack notifications, 63 calendar requests. A tidal wave of attention crashing against the walls of my life. My publicist had left me 5 voicemails, each more frantic than the last. My CFO sent a string of messages about the stock market reacting to the article. My head of HR reported thousands of job applicants flooding our servers. It was all predictable. What wasn't predictable was the message sitting near the top of the unread pile. From Catherine Waddell, I hate you for this. I stared at it expressionless, then clicked it open. I hate you for this. You ruined everything. You made it about you. You broke my wedding. Why couldn't you just stay small for one day? A strange, hollow sadness bloomed in my chest. It wasn't new, just a deeper version of something I'd carried my whole life. I typed slowly. I'm sorry it happened at your wedding. I'm not sorry for my success. I hesitated, then added, I hope one day you can be proud of me instead of embarrassed by me. But if not, I'll be okay. I don't need your approval anymore. I hit send. My hands trembled slightly when I set the laptop aside. I walked to the window, letting the cool glass rest against my palms. The city glittered in the darkness, a constellation of possibility, of victories and failures stacked atop each other like some architectural metaphor for ambition. This skyline had seen me cry in rental cars, code in co-working spaces until dawn pitch, to investors who looked at me like a gamble, then eventually as a gold mine. This city had seen me. My family never had. For a moment, just a moment, I let myself remember the early days, the sleepless nights in a tiny rented room eating instant noodles while debugging thousands of lines of code, the cold, fluorescent-lit pitch rooms where I was told I was too young, too soft-spoken, too inexperienced, the investors who dismissed me outright until they didn't, the day my first employee signed on, the night I realized Sentinel might actually work, the moment the first Fortune 500 contract went through and I cried alone in a bathroom stall because I had no one to tell. No one who believed in me enough to rejoice with me. Not then. Maybe not now. My phone buzzed again, not with the chaotic stream of media and business notifications, but with a single text highlighted in its own quiet thread. From Dad, I don't know how to fix this, but I want to try, please. I sat down slowly, the weight of the message settling over me like heavy fabric. I read it again. Then again. Dad rarely said please. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time he'd said it to me. The ache behind my ribs tightened. For the first time that night, tears stung my eyes. Not from anger, not from vindication, but from something more fragile and complicated. Grief. The grief of knowing that the little girl who used to reach for his approval would have given anything to receive those words years ago. The grief of understanding that success had bought me respect, but not the love I once needed. The grief of realizing I had built an empire out of the very loneliness they'd carved into me. I closed my eyes. His message wasn't enough, but it wasn't nothing. I typed a response, then deleted it. Typed another, then deleted it too. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt honest enough, gentle enough, guarded enough. So I left it unsent. Maybe tomorrow I'd know what to say. Or maybe tomorrow I'd still be figuring it out. I stepped away from my desk and turned off the office lights, leaving only the glow of the city to illuminate the room. In the reflection of the window, I saw myself, not the shadow billionaire from the article, not the invisible sister from the wedding, but simply Sylvia Waddle, a woman who had built something extraordinary, a woman who didn't need anyone to validate her anymore, a woman who could finally stand in the truth of who she was without shrinking to make others comfortable. Tomorrow, the world would demand everything from me. Interviews, meetings, promises, explanations. My family would reach out again. More relatives would surface. Opportunists would circle. Reporters would dig. But tonight I allowed myself a rare, quiet moment of stillness. A moment to acknowledge that I had climbed a mountain alone and survived. A moment to ask myself a question that no longer terrified me. Did their belief ever matter? Maybe once, but not anymore. I touched the window, watching the city pulse beneath my fingertips like a living thing. I'll keep building, I whispered to no one. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, entirely enough.